Every detective story you've ever read owes its existence to a ball of yarn. The word clue, C-L-U-E, that crucial piece of evidence that cracks the case, it comes from clew, C-L-E-W, meaning a wound ball of thread. And the reason why involves a princess, a monster, and one of mythology's most brutal betrayals. This isn't just word trivia. The journey from C-L-E-W to C-L-U-E reveals something startling about how we think through problems, navigate confusion, and why we've been obsessed with mysteries for over 2 millennia. That word carries an entire philosophy about knowledge and guidance, about the threads connecting cause to effect. When Chaucer wrote about Ariadne's thread in the 14th century, he was retelling a Greek myth that had already become the ultimate metaphor for problem solving. By the time Agatha Christie wrote her first mystery, that ancient ball of yarn had spawned an entire genre. But to understand how string became the key to unlocking secrets, we need to start where all good stories do, with a monster in a maze. The Minotaur wasn't supposed to exist. King Minos of Crete had cut a deal with Poseidon. The sea god would send up a magnificent white bull, and Minos would sacrifice it back as tribute. Simple transaction. Except Minos saw this perfect creature and thought, actually, I'll keep this one. He sacrificed one of his own bulls instead, figuring he could fool a god. Bad move. Poseidon's revenge was exquisitely twisted. He cursed Minos' wife to fall desperately in love with the white bull. The result? The Minotaur, half human, half bull, entirely monstrous. Minos, horrified by what his greed had created, hired master craftsman Daedalus to build a labyrinth so complex the creature could never escape. Here's what most retellings miss. This wasn't just a prison, it was a work of art so sophisticated that even Daedalus could barely navigate it. Ancient sources describe countless passages, false turns, chambers that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. Some say 1,000 rooms, others claim multiple levels, with staircases to nowhere and doors opening onto solid walls. Labyrinth itself comes from Greek labyrinthos, possibly from labris, the double-headed axe symbolizing royal power in Minoan Crete. Though many etymologists think it's even older, from some pre-Greek language we've lost entirely, a linguistic fossil from vanished Mediterranean civilizations. For years, the Minotaur fed on Athens' tribute, 7 young men and 7 women, delivered every 7 years as payment for some ancient offense. They'd be shoved through the entrance and never seen again, until Theseus volunteered to go in. Now here's where it gets linguistically interesting. The Greek word for what Ariadne gave Theseus was mitos, thread. But when this story traveled north into Germanic languages, it became something different. Old English clewen meant a ball of thread, specifically thread wound into a ball, ready for use. This distinction matters more than you'd think. Loose thread tangles, breaks, leads you astray, but a clue, a carefully wound ball, contains both the thread and the method. It's organized chaos, potential energy waiting for controlled release. When Ariadne handed Theseus that clue, she wasn't just giving him string, she was giving him a technology. But here's where the traditional telling goes wrong. Most versions focus on Theseus, brave prince slays monster, wins girl. The real hero is Ariadne, and her gift wasn't just clever, it was revolutionary. Think about what the clue actually does. Theseus ties one end at the entrance, unwinds it as he goes deeper. After killing the Minotaur, he follows it back to safety. Simple, right? Wrong. This is early systematic problem-solving methodology. The clue transforms an unsolvable puzzle into a solvable one. Doesn't matter how complex the maze, how many false turns, how disorienting the journey. The thread creates a direct line between problem and solution, between confusion and clarity. It's ancient backtracking, a fundamental algorithm computer scientists would later formalize thousands of years later. Medieval writers got this deeper meaning. When Chaucer wrote about Ariadne's clue around 1385, he wasn't just retelling myth. Listen to his description. And by the teching of this Adriani, he made the house of Labyrinthus wend. The clue becomes teching, teaching, instruction, a method for navigating complexity. But there's a darker thread here, one that explains why CLUE carries such weight in detective fiction. Theseus doesn't just kill the monster and escape, he takes Ariadne, promising marriage. Then, on Naxos Island, while she sleeps on the beach, he abandons her, sails away in the night, leaving behind the woman who saved his life. Some versions soften this. Maybe Dionysus told him to leave her, maybe he simply forgot. But the oldest sources are clear: calculated abandonment. Theseus used Ariadne's knowledge, took what he needed, discarded her. This betrayal echoes through every detective story ever written. The clue, that crucial evidence, often comes from someone then forgotten, dismissed, or worse. The witness whose testimony cracks the case but vanishes from the narrative. The informant who provides key insight but gets no credit. The pattern's so consistent, it's practically literary law. The source of the clue is expendable. Even the spelling change tells a story of abandonment. In Middle English, French borrowings often ended "u", blue for blue, true for true. When these reformed to UE spellings, the change spread to native Germanic words like CLEW. The original form was left behind, just like Ariadne on her beach. By the 1590s, when CLUE first appears with its modern meaning, anything that guides in an intricate case, the thread connection was already metaphorical. But the mythological baggage remained. A clue wasn't just information, it was information that came at a cost, often to whoever provided it. The real genius of Clue to Clue lies in what it reveals about human problem solving. When we follow a lead, or pull on a thread, or unravel a mystery, we're using Ariadne's metaphor from 3,000 years ago. Complex problems solved by finding the right starting point and following logical paths. But here's what makes this etymology truly remarkable. It predicted the future of human knowledge. Every scientific breakthrough, solved crime, decoded message follows the same pattern as Theseus in the labyrinth. Start with a clue, one thread of evidence, and follow it wherever it leads, even into the darkest corners. Consider detective fiction, the genre that made CLUE a household word. When Conan Doyle created Holmes in 1887, he was drawing on this ancient metaphor. Holmes doesn't just solve crimes, he navigates labyrinths of deception using threads of evidence. You see, but you do not observe, he tells Watson. Same lesson Ariadne taught Theseus. The difference between wandering aimlessly and following method. Christie took this further. Her novels repeatedly invoke the metaphor of following threads through mazes of deception. Poirot speaks of using his little grey cells to follow logic's thread through human psychology's maze. Christie understood that every mystery story retells the same ancient myth. Someone enters confusion's labyrinth, follows evidence's thread, confronts the monster, the murderer, emerges into truth's light. The most fascinating development happened in 1949 when board game Cluedo launched in Britain. Here was the Ariadne myth as parlor game, players navigating a mansion, another labyrinth, using clues to solve murder. The name Cluedo combines CLUE with Latin ludo, I play. Literally, I play with clues. Ancient problem-solving technology transformed into entertainment. The Germanic root of CLEW connects to words meaning form into a ball or round mass. This linguistic family gives us related concepts, things wound together, formed into cohesive wholes. The connection runs deeper than etymology. It reflects our fundamental understanding of how knowledge works. Scattered information becomes useful only when organized, wound together like thread in a ball, ready for systematic deployment. When 19th century neuroscientists discovered glial cells, they named them after Greek glia, glue, because these cells seem to hold the brain together. They didn't realize they were using a word sharing conceptual DNA with CLUE, but the metaphor's perfect. Glial cells help organize neural networks that let us think, solve problems, follow logic's threads through consciousness's own labyrinth. This is why CLUE etymology matters beyond curiosity. It encodes fundamental truth about human cognition. We're pattern-seeking creatures who navigate complexity by finding connections, following threads, building mental maps of territories we explore. Every time we solve a problem, we're reenacting Theseus's journey. Next time someone says they don't have a clue, remember Ariadne on that beach at Naxos. She'd given away her most precious possession, not just a thread, but knowledge of how to use it. She'd solved an impossible problem, saved a hero's life only to be abandoned and forgotten. In that moment of betrayal, she became history's first person who literally didn't have a clue anymore. She'd given it all away, got nothing back but empty beach and the sound of distant sails disappearing over the horizon. Maybe that's the real lesson hidden in this ancient word. The most valuable clues often come from those we're quickest to forget.